Hey Sis, it's a weekly shakedown of the binary walls around us.
Breaking it out and building a bridge.
Checking our biases with empathy and humility and questioning the status quo.
It's about building allyship that is intentional and confident. Music is a universal storyteller, and time again we see marginalized and underrepresented communities using music as a way to amplify their messages and showcase their life story.
We are joined today by Kenny Fitzpatrick, host of Q Review. It's a podcast series dedicated to showcasing and sharing the stories and experiences of LGBTQ+ identifying musicians and artists.
Kenny has recently begun collaborating with the Halifax-based station CIOE 97.5 FM to bring the community a new weekly radio show dedicated to presenting the music from LGBTQ artists titled Out Loud.
So great to meet you, and so congratulations on launching Out Loud. You're in season 3 of your podcast.
Yeah, and episode 3, I don't know what to call it, episode or show. It's so weird for me to be doing a radio show. But the 3rd show of Out Loud, the radio show, is tonight.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's such a fantastic niche, your ability to, grow and reinvent the way that you're reaching the queer community and also getting queer music out there to cisgender people as well, I think is just a real testament to your talent and your creativity. Congrats.
It's so vital. When I kind of started this, it started out of like a love of music for myself, but I've always been involved with music. But I kind of started looking and saying, why am I not seeing any, queer country, queer rap? I'm like, I'm an educated person. I know that there's people out there who's making this music. You don't have to be educated. It's just common sense. But I was just like, why are we not seeing it? And then as you start to pull back the layers more and more and more and more, you start to discover that the blocks that are there, the gatekeeping that's there, anyone from a marginalized community knows that there's always hurdles there to kind of get around and figure out. So I was just like, if I'm going to keep putting my time into music, I really need to be a part of the mechanism that lifts the voices of queer artists, because I'm such a fan of music and they're making great music. It needs to be heard. People will enjoy it. This is not a question.
Well, on that note, I was listening to one of your interviews with Jax out of Toronto, with Virgin Radio there, and they had mentioned that funding was a huge barrier, and that. So, what other barriers would you see are out there for the queer community in getting their music out?
I mean, full stop. Funding's always a barrier. We're really, really fortunate in Canada that we have some mechanisms set up with MIAs, which is the Music Industry Associations, in every province. And then we have Factor Canada at the top of it. And I know that even artists will still say that we're still underfunded, even though those mechanisms are there. But there's a lot of places in the world who don't even have that. And Factor is now, really breaking things down from their level and saying, for International Women's Day, for Indigenous Peoples Day, for Black History Month, for Pride, they want to see more development in those areas from the MIAs, which is great. But that is, for funding for projects is one thing, but venues and when you sit down and you talk to an artist and you say, okay, when you're touring, what's that like for you? You start to have the conversation of, well, there's certain places, especially in the United States when we're talking to artists, there's certain places where they change, or they may feel that they need to change pronouns within their songs because they may be playing in a venue or in a town, and they want to play because they want, they need to live, they need to make money. Pre-COVID, of course. But, when you are actually, you have to take a step back and think about whether you have to change the music of your song, like the lyrics of your song, for safety. That's a huge barrier, right? Right there in itself, that's a huge barrier. Probably a lot of artists, are sometimes, kind of called out for not being authentic, but there's reasons why they're not. And then there's reasons why some are really pushing the envelope, and it's a balance. Mm-hmm. I'd also say that, and it's funny because I'm on a radio show and I'm doing a radio show, but mainstream radio is really narrow in terms of what is being kind of produced. And, you think about the queer names that are on mainstream radio, and the ones that come to mind, outside of Elton, because Elton's, is king. But, you do get the same names. You get your Sam Smiths, you get your Halsey, and it's such a big world that's out there. I mean, if you want to talk who's kind of being left by the wayside, you get into trans, black trans, drag. There is recording artists, and the subgenres are breaking down so much. They're getting so more like diversified. But yeah, it's about getting heard. You talk about Spotify did, and I'm always after Spotify. People are probably tired of hearing it from me. But these are huge mechanisms to be heard, but it really limiting in the payout, and then really limiting in terms of the algorithms that are applied to it. And I mean, there was a huge thing within the queer community just this summer where Sam Smith became and nothing against Sam Smith, God love him. But he became the face of Spotify's official playlist. And it was there for months. He was there for months, and the Spotify list didn't change. And artists are releasing and sending things in, and they're like, why is this not changing? Is it that people don't know it? And I was kind of like, if you need help, let us know. We are finding the artists. We are trying to champion them. And you don't get response back. So there's a lot of barriers and a lot of,
It's like that funnel system that just pushes the top few out and up and out. Or
like they need to already have an established platform to be able to get out of that funnel. And it's so hard as queer people to just get a basic platform to start, producing music. So I can definitely see that as a barrier.
Well, I mean, the anxiety in an artist themselves alone, and there's so many now who are coming out, and they don't have to come out because they're already out because they were never in with their music. They're leading and they're saying, I am a queer artist. This is what I talk about. Here's, my world. And they're not hiding. But they also go into that 100% knowing that they are limited automatically because people either will say, well, I don't know how to market that, or I don't know if people want to listen to that. It's like, has nothing to do with whether or not they're queer. Is the music good? That's what should matter. But they shouldn't feel like they have to hide who they are simply because of the likelihood of not getting played. Gender fluidity in music right now is really taking off in a lot of different ways. I don't know if you know who Dorian Electra is, but I mean, I love Dorian Electra, and I think Dorian Electra is one of the greatest things happening out there, but maybe a little bit too much for a young kid. Very colorful, but really playing with gender binary, like playing madcap-wise, like so much happening.
So true.
And that in itself is a huge bias. I mean, even if you talk to women in country, women will tell you, regardless of whether or not they're queer, they'll be like, I'm a woman, I'm fighting to get heard.
Yeah, 100%. Especially within country music, I find that the rigid stereotypes are so much firmer with that. And I mean, I'm just looking at like Lil Nas X is like so against like that traditional kind of country singer, and I think that's amazing. And it's definitely creating that groundwork that we need for more, intersectionality within music. So on the topic kind of as like community and all that fun stuff, what do you think that a community can do to help support and advocate for queer artists?
Oh, listen.
The $1 million question.
Excuse me, I run over here and grab my soapbox. There's a lot that can be done. And I've been saying to the artists that we can yell as much as we want to, but the machines that are in play and dollars are in play. So those are big machines to kind of fight against. But we can start with ourselves. And I love to say to young folks, I'm so old, when I talk to youth groups and because I do that, I'm trying to get out there more and more. I was speaking with, not too long ago, a group in Long Island, and I joined them for one of their groups to talk about the kind of music that's out there and how they can kind of get involved. And I always say to them, I don't want to take anything away from Ariana Grande. I love her. I think she's great. But for every Ariana Grande, find yourself, a Moist Breezy, or find yourself I'm trying to think of artists now to pull out the top of my head, but like, a Brooklyn Doran here in Canada, a Kim Petras, a Shea Cooley. Find these artists and become fans of them, because they're in your community and they're part of your history. They're part of the fabric of who we are.
I was thinking, Isaac and I are both volunteers with PFLAG Halifax and PFLAG Canada. And it was actually PFLAG National that had emailed me and said, hey, have you heard about Out Loud? And sent me the link. And we had already had you on our radar to connect. I think Isaac had already reached out at that point. Super cool. But so we did a float in the parade when we could have a parade, not this past summer with COVID, but the summer before. And even that, linking to Pride, even if the Pride organizations would put a link on their website to a great resource like yours that, as I was listening to, I wanted just to check out your podcast, because for me, I love music. I listen to it, but I've never really broken it down to is that queer artist or not? And honestly, diving into the past episodes that you've done, I was blown away by the range of music, the range of talent, even the Irish episode you did on St. Patrick's Day, that music was fantastic. And my kid, now I lived in Ireland. I heard you say you're Irish, so we have that in common because my kids were all born over there. But I thought it as a mandatory, if you're in a float in a Pride parade, you should be playing queer music.
Yeah, and not the stereotype.
You shouldn't be playing the
YMCA
top 40.
and
exactly,
those kind of stereotypical
right?
queer songs, and maybe they are done by queer artists, but just because they talk about gay topics doesn't mean you're actively supporting, the queer community,
yeah.
right?
And because I emailed all of the locations for PFLAG in Canada, and I send things out. I'm trying not to be too, especially right now. I know that people are working from home, and I don't know who has access to what. But for me, it's kind of really getting the music into the ears of the kids and letting them know. And I say this all the time, and people, they don't really necessarily think of it this way, because they think it may be that it's just too far blown. And I'm like, it's not when you think about it. When you think about, in North America especially, how many rural communities that we have where kids don't have access to a paper flag, and they want that, and they may not show anybody that they have it, but they want it because it's just a touchstone from them. But to be able to, find an artist that talks about things in the way, I'm going to give you a really good example of what's happening on the radio right now. That's Conan Gray. Conan Gray's Heather, that's on the radio right now, and it's just kind of blowing up, and it's resonating with kids so much because he never has to say in that song that he's talking about a boy. He's just singing the song, but just from the lyrics and the words, any queer boy has had that, we've had those moments, and suddenly you feel validated and you feel like somebody gets you.
Yeah, it's so true. It's that visibility that they need. And I'll tell you, the interview you did with T. Thomason was brilliant. And just so with one of our parents group of supporting trans and non-binary kids, one of the moms had said to me recently that they were listening to T. Thomason. They're like, have you heard of the singer? I'm like, I've heard, but tell me. And she sent me a link to Bliss with Sarah McLachlan.
No.
And oh my God, she's like, I just sit here and sometimes I weep to it because it's just so meaningful, and it just helps her and gives her strength. But also when she said it to her son, she was like, hey, have you even heard of this artist? And he's like, oh yeah, I follow him. And so, she wasn't even aware of that. But, these kids are finding, the music, and it I think it means so much to them just to have that.
It can be life-saving. It literally can be life-saving. When you are in a dark place and you think that there is nowhere in the world for you, and suddenly you come across, you know, a young guy, young girl, young trans person, young BIPOC person who's singing and speaking it resonates with you, you could be in a really dark place, and that can actually pull you out of it just for a few minutes to kind of be like, all right. And then suddenly you're off and running to kind of find more of that, because you know that it feels good. You know that it feels great to be validated. I just had and I thought it was going to turn into an argument. I'm so glad that it didn't, on Reddit. And I posted the latest update to the playlist. And I find people and I just put them on this playlist because there's something there for everyone. And somebody kind of responded to it, and their response was, "Isn't this a bit reductive?" And I was like, "How do you mean?" And they said, "Well, I've never really thought about, why it would be necessary to know if an artist was queer or not. It's just whether or not the music is good." And then I said to him, I was just kind of like, think about it. I was like, as somebody who grew up in the 70s and 80s, I never had anybody in music to look up to who spoke about same-sex, love, who I never had a chance to kind of go to a teen dance or a high school dance and hear a song that really spoke to me playing a love song. I never got a chance to do that. It's like, so for some of these kids that are out there, or even just adults who, are still kind of like living in areas, I'm like, this stuff is important to them. So it's important for them to know who their community is.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not rocket science. The music itself, yes, it needs to be good. We all want good music. But if you're a queer artist and you play the spoons, I still say, you know what? You need to be heard. You deserve to be heard.
Yeah. So. You deserve a platform.
Well, I grew up in the 80s, or in the 70s and 80s as well. I'm not disclosing anything other than that, but down Brampton in Ontario. And I remember, I loved George Michael. My favorite song was Careless Whisper. And I grew up listening to that and loved it. And then when I found out that he was gay, I was so confused as to why he didn't shoot the video gay, as if with another man. And I thought, why is he catering to us? And I just couldn't get it. I didn't understand the barriers and the fear, the barriers that he would have faced in his generation.
Yeah.
Because as a cisgender person, back then you just, you think, oh, you're an artist, you're amazing, I would listen to you either way. But I was unaware of that homophobia that existed to such an intense level back then that, even for trans artists today, it can be, quite prevalent.
The music industry is, if you talk to artists, if you talk to some artists, they'll be like, oh no, things are fine. But that's because they've never really had the barriers in place. And that comes from a place of ignorance in terms of never, having to experience things. But when you talk to, artists, and like I said, it doesn't have to be queer artists. It can be, it can be racially ignited. It can be gender-based and gender-biased. When you talk to artists, they'll say, yeah, there are barriers. There are, times where I don't feel like I'm going to get taken seriously. Times when I'm kind of excluded automatically because they assume that because I'm Black, I should be making this music over here, and it couldn't possibly be interested in this music over here. There's a lot of that happens. I'm running a campaign right now called My Music Story. So artists from around the world are contributing, and, Dario Knotts is a good example of a young Black artist who plays with, gender norms and changes it up and is playing with so many different things out there. And, he's saying that. He's saying, as a Black artist, I'm fighting multiple battles. The intersectionality within music, you can be a queer, trans, person of color, and coming from a rural community and certain backgrounds and a religious background. There's so much that can kind of come into play, that the segmentation is it's so broad. But yeah, these artists will tell you that, yeah, there are some barriers that they're coming up against. And getting back to June and getting back to George Floyd and what happened and is still happening, that hasn't gone anywhere. It's just it has quieted down because of other things. But that what came out of that from the music industry was the show must be paused. And even then, there was a lot of content that came out of that was, really. You had to kind of think about and really take on and sit with and live with and really reflect on.
So, in some ways, it's really about getting this music out to the cis community as well, and the straight community, and having it so all the more reason to be integrated right into a radio program, into the mainstream to a certain extent, but still within its own special segment, so that people can start to engage and it can start to break down stigmas and these walls between yours and mine.
Yeah. I mean, having a radio show that is called Out Loud and is playing queer music doesn't mean that the music's only for queer people. That is the thing. But there is the other side of it where queer people want to, and I would hope they would want to, but really should know who those artists are, so they can help lift and raise the voices of those artists and as people and be proud of it. Be proud of who our artists are. Be proud, and it doesn't have to just be Canadian. It can be Canadian, it can be German, it can be, listen, there are artists everywhere. I got an email last night from somebody from Barcelona, wanting to do something. And I'm just like, sure, let's figure it out.
Tell me about
they don't have that.
Tell me about country, because I love country, and it's not something where I would think you would see a lot of out queer artists. So do you have a favorite, or is there anyone?
Listen, so I don't know if you saw the QTube episode I did on being queer in country music. Nope. That's on YouTube. So I had Chris Hausman from Nashville, Courtney Lynn and Quinn from Maryland. God, to hear this, please. I don't mean to get it wrong, but I think from Maryland. And Tommy Atkins, who's a gem from the UK, from England. Cause my whole thing with him was just like, when he first came out and he was doing country music, I was kind of like, dude, I was just like, is country huge in the UK? Because that is something I would probably be surprised by, because you never hear it. He's like, it's gaining ground. But then there's Cameron Hawthorne. And he just, I give Cameron all the credit in the world. He released his song, Dancing in My Living Room. And in the video, it was him and, it was two men waltzing to a country song in a living room, right? Which of course shakes the ground of country people, kind of get, a little freaked out by it. But I mean, you can't sit there and think that this wouldn't be possible or happening. And then he just released another song, I think it's called To Break Hers First. And it's about really talking about how he was in a relationship with a woman and knew he was probably going to have to break her heart, because to be true to himself, and just how upsetting, that is. So I did an interview with him and he talked a little bit about that, but he's somebody that's kind of coming up. I mean, Brandi Carlile, let's just be honest. 6 Grammy nominations for her album. And the album is spot on, fantastic, whether or not you want to call it, Americana country, even from a mainstream standpoint. It's one of the best albums that was put out that year, last year. And she really opened up a lot of doors for artists to kind of really talk about it and think about it. But yeah, country's starting to really come a long way. Brandon Stansel, amazing. Steve Grand was one of the first country artists that actually kind of came out. I think he was in a position where he's good looking, he's well built, and then it became really about his physicality, because God love our gay men, but sometimes they steer right into the traps of sex and how sex sells sometimes, right? And I think that he's now trying to really kind of come back and be more, from the artist standpoint, because I think that took on a little bit. I mean, that's just from my standpoint, but Billy Gilman.
I just heard something recently on Tom Powers on the Q about Peter Frampton and how he fell right into that too, because he's a good-looking guy, and and that's people wanted him on the covers of magazines, and he kind of succumbed to that whole pop thing for a while, which he learned many lessons, but still feels super guilty about having played into that, and so it does happen for sure.
And it ties it in really into like just being authentically yourself. Like, are you going to appease to what the crowd wants? You're going to appease to what the world wants, or you're going to be authentically yourself doing what you want to do. So
I think there's the trap in music is really about, there's that seduction of building very, very quickly and gaining as much momentum as possible. But there's also the burnout of that. And, I've said to artists, you have to really, kind of manage your expectations of what success is. And do you want a career, or do you want to have like a hot selling song or whatnot, right? Like, I mean, sometimes the career path, and if you really want to have longevity in a career, it's going to take some time, and you're really going to have to pace yourself and deal with some of that seduction and how it can derail your career, and the longevity of your career. I mean, sexuality has done it to so many artists. Billy Gilman, such a young artist when he started out, country phenomenon, and then, took a step back and away. He eventually came out, and he's not having as easy of a go of it. He's still got fans, and he's still kind of gaining, but he's now an adult. And Brian Falduto, who I did a interview with, I talked to him pretty regularly. He was in the School of Rock with Jack Black. So he was the young fella that wasn't playing musicians, but he was the artistic director, and he was, the very stereotypical young boy who is kind of like, the artistic director. But he's a country artist now. He's and doing a lot of work, and he does a lot of work with a few groups talking to youth about, faith and sexuality, and how there's a lot of young individuals in the United States who feel torn because their religion or their faith will, put them in a place of feeling like they're not right, or they can't have both. And so he does a lot of work with that section of youth, but also he's a country musician, and he's playing into a lot of different types of country, and I just think it's great that they're having fun with it. And I think that country is something that has been stigmatized, and I think it's going to take a lot to unstigmatize it. But yeah, there's a lot of country coming out there, and it's really exciting to see. And I'm not necessarily a country fan, but when I first heard Chris Hausman, I was just like, this man could make me a country fan. He sounds like he should be on the radio. He sounds like every one of his songs sounds just as any bit as good as any artist that's kind of out there. It was a struggle for him because he was nervous about kind of coming out.
I'm going to fire off a quick insight into Kenny Fitzpatrick.
Oh, jeez.
So whereabouts were you born?
I was born in Miramichi, New Brunswick, back before it was amalgamated, when it was still Newcastle and Chatham and all that kind of thing. And I was born in the Chatham part of it, in the Chatham Hospital.
Awesome.
Okay, and now you're Nova Scotia.
I inadvertently got here. So I had family here, but from living in Miramichi, I moved to Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I did my undergraduates there. After I finished that, I moved to Toronto, and to me, it feels like I spent 10 years there. People will tell me maybe it was 5. I have no idea. I lived there for a number of years, and when my husband and my mom had passed away, and we came out to kind of settle things and that back to New Brunswick, and we came over to Halifax, and we just kind of fell in love with it, and we decided, hey, let's move back. And to be honest, the East Coast has such a quality of life that sometimes we don't give enough credit to. The cities are there. You can always get to the city, but to live in the city, you don't really realize what it does to you until you move back and out of the city, and you realize, man, that's hard. It's hard on you. So I got a lot of experience from Toronto, but I was like, yeah, my husband's from Ontario, so I wasn't going to be like, let's move back out east. You know, his family is there, and I wasn't going to suggest that, but it was him who was kind of like, we should move there, and I was kind of like, oh, sure. Coming back to ocean air, no problem.
Okay,
that's awesome.
Favorite food?
You know, that is a toughie because food is a chore to me. It really is. I would probably eat cereal every night if I could, bran flakes and like granola.
Oh, really?
Because sometimes we have too much food and it's too hard to make decisions. And to think about, oh my God, what's it going to do? And as you get older, food reacts with you differently, and you just feel like you're carrying around a weight with you. But I really do, as a style of food, I do love Italian food. I love Thai food. I do like spicy. So yeah,
that you like to go to, a favorite neighborhood place or?
I do. I really, here in Halifax, in Nova Scotia, I love the Wooden Monkey. I really do. Love the Wooden Monkey. I love, I'm trying to think. Don't get out very often anymore.
Well, that's COVID, right? It's changed the whole landscape of dining out.
I'm trying to think of what's around that I would kind of go to automatically. Wooden Monkey is definitely one of them. I loved Il Trullo, but it's closed, and I'm hoping that it's going to reopen. But yeah, it was a great little Italian restaurant. But yeah, I like to try different places, and I also love mom and pop shops.
Nice.
I love local. I love to kind of go and find a really cool diner or a cafe that's run by a local, group. I think that's great. You can go to a Tim's anytime. I like to go to, somebody who's got their own thing going on.
Yeah,
a
nice.
small little coffee shop. So next question for you. I know it'd be really, difficult to ask what your favorite song is or favorite musician, but what's your favorite movie?
Favorite song or musician wouldn't be that difficult. I am an alt-rock kid. I grew up, Depeche Mode is a huge, in terms of 80s synth and just kind of like that moodiness. Linkin Park, 30 Seconds to Mars. I love alt-rock. I'm a grunge guy. So in that kind of vein, I'm a big fan of those folks. Movie-wise, depends on where Lord. So I'm a geek. I love Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel superheroes, anything like that. I am a huge fan of. I will go and watch crazy things in the theater just because they may be in space. Empire Strikes Back is a huge one for me. Of course, what Marvel did with the Avengers is great. It's hard to narrow them down to one because it is just an all-encapsulating kind of universe. But I'm going to tell you 3 movies that are really big in my heart. One's The Color Purple. Love The Color Purple. It's kind of like my I don't know. It's my go-to movie on many occasions. I love it. I love that whole story. Mystery Alaska. I love sports movies for some reason, especially football movies. And I would say that Remember the Titans is another big one for me.
Okay. All right.
Very diverse.
I'm so surprised.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all.
I like horror movies too. And rom-coms. I like all movies. I'll watch pretty much anything.
Okay. Cheers, Kenny.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
You can tune in to Out Loud Radio Show every Thursday at 10 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on CIOE 97.5 FM or online at communityradio.ca. You can also stream Q Review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, that's all the time we have today, folks. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Hey Sis.
If you have any questions you want to ask or want to join in on the conversation, email us at connect@simplygoodforum.com.
Thank you all, and remember, inclusion matters.